from Northeast Texas. I have three grown children. Um, and for now, I've been happily married for 12 years. I live in this town that I always end up back to after 4.5 years. I can't go away any longer than 4.5 years, or some sort of tragedy or trauma brings me back home where I'm secured from family and friends. I guess so I'm meant to be here since I'm brought back every 4.5 years after I leave. Um, for example, just recently lived in South Texas and my home was destroyed by Hurricane Harvey. We lived there for 4.5 years, and so I had to come back home. But other than that, I am Texan. I've left Texas twice, once to join the Army, but I hurt my knee, and so I didn't get to finish basic training. And to go to upstate New York, and I was in upstate New York for 4.5 years. Ended up, I met somebody in physical therapy in the Army and went to visit him in upstate New York and loved it so much that I went up there and moved up there and came down here and got my kids and my stuff and moved up there. And everything was grand for 4.5 years until one day we had gotten in an argument about our dogs, and he hit me over the head with a ceramic bowl and fractured my skull. And I woke up in the hospital 2 days later and asked, first thing I asked was where my children were. But they were with the preacher and his family, so I knew they were in good hands. And I was in the hospital for a month, and I was up there for 2 months, so I developed PTSD, of course, always watching over my shoulder, thinking he was going to come back and attack me because his mom bailed him out. But I can start with my story now if you like. That's a little bit about my background there.
And I want to say thank you for that background. You mentioned that you went through Hurricane Harvey, and then you went through this type of trauma where you were attacked and you ended up in the hospital. So before we get into the meat of it, how was life between Hurricane Harvey and when you ended up in the hospital?
Well, actually, the hospital, that happened in 2007, and Hurricane Harvey happened in 2017, so that was before. I've been with my current husband since 2008, so that I guess I was only with without someone for about a month, but I've known my current husband since I was 5 years old. So that's 44 years. So we've known each other all our lives. And he unloaded my U-Haul when I got back from New York. And we just kind of hung out again as friends. And then one day we ended up together, and we've been together ever since. So ever since 2008.
And this is someone that was there for you after you had that trauma, and
Yes.
they were like your support system. So when you went from that experience to reuniting with this friend, this person that you've known for so long, and then you two developed a romantic relationship and you guys have been together ever since. How was that transition period for you?
At first it was a little scary, and my son hated it. He did not want me to get into another relationship, and I understood that, and I was kind of scared too as well, so I took things really slowly. But like I said, knowing him all my life, that helped ease the transition and made things a lot easier, and better, because he knew my kids since they were born. And so they finally adapted to the idea, and their their father actually ended up passing away in 2016. So, my current husband, they treat him like a dad. He's been there for them since 2008. So he raised them from teenagers pretty much. So he helped me with the hard stuff.
And was it during this time where you experienced the medical condition, the MSA, or is it another period of time?
I started having symptoms in about 2018, the end of 2018, I started falling a lot, having a lack of coordination, and just would drop things a lot and shake really badly. And my husband he didn't understand it, so he would be like, "Why are you shaking?" We'd be at a doctor's office and there would be like 90-year-old ladies, and he goes, "She's not even shaking as much as you." And I was like, "I don't know, I don't know what's wrong with me. We got to find out." So they diagnosed me with Parkinson's first, and it took, and that's usual because I think I told you there's only it's so rare. There's only 4 people out of 100,000 in the US that are diagnosed with this disorder. So I just happen to be one of those that drew an unlucky card. But so it took 2.5 years. I finally got sent to a movement disorder specialist, and he's in neuroscience. So he knew right away when he saw me, you don't have Parkinson's, you have MSA. And I didn't know anything about MSA, of course, because it's rare. And my husband now, he was this appointment was out of town, so we had stayed at a little cabin the night before, and he stayed there during my appointment because since COVID, you can only have one person go with you to appointments. And I had my stepmom go with me because she's a nurse, and so I called him because we were there for 4 hours. This is my first appointment. We were there for 4 hours. And I told him, it's not Parkinson's, and I'm sorry it's taken so long. I've still got to go and have some lab work done and get some prescription. He said, "Well, what is it?" And I said, "It's MSA." And before I could get from the doctor's office to the cabin, he had already read about it. And he came running out to the car, and he was just frantic, pale as a ghost. His hair was just frazzled, and he just was standing there, and I was like, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "What do you mean, what's wrong?" And I said, "What is wrong? I'm sorry it took so long, they had so much to do with this first visit." And he says, "You only have 5 to 7 years to live." And I said, "Do what?" And he just fell to the ground in tears and crying. And my stepmom had to go and pick him up and say, "Hey, they have clinical studies, things like that. We may be able to find a cure before then." Of course, then I could walk, but now I can't. So I've progressed a lot since I was first diagnosed. Fastly, rarely rapidly.
And for those of us who don't know, and this includes myself, what is MSA and what are some of the conditions, just so we fully understand how how life is for you now that you are one of those people who have this condition?
MSA is multi-system atrophy. It is a neurological disorder. So it starts in your brain, and it affects your body's involuntary, like your autonomic systems, your breathing, your circulation, your circulatory system, your um, bladder function, your motor control, your speaking. Um, Mine started out, um, like Parkinson's, like most of them were diagnosed with like symptoms, with the slow movements and the rigid muscle and poor balance. And treatment includes, just medication and lifestyle changes to help manage, but there's no cure, and this condition eventually ends in death. And the life expectancy is about 5 to 7 years from the onset of symptoms.
And you've had it for about 5 years now, almost 5 years,
About 4.5, yeah.
4.5. So when you say that the life expectancy is 5 to 7 years, and you're at 4.5 years, almost 5 years now, how do you feel saying that now?
At first, I was really scared, you know, and my kids have lost their dad, so I was, and had such a loss this past few years. They've lost their dad, their uncle, their grandma, and then their aunt committed suicide, all in a matter of 3 years. And then now, it's about the fifth year, and then we find out I have this terminal condition. So yeah, I worry about the kids, but then I know that they have my husband. He's gonna be there for them, and then they have each other. But I'm at peace with it now because I know I'm not gonna be hurting anymore, because it's very painful. There's actually two types of MSA. There's MSAP, which is Parkinsonism, which is the one I have, and then there's MSAC. That's the cerebellar type, and that is visual disturbances and difficulty swallowing. But when you get towards the end, you do develop symptoms of both. So I'm starting to have swallowing difficulties now and little visual disturbances where I'll see double sometimes or blurry. So I can tell, especially with mobility, it's so much worse. And I go to physical therapy or aquatic therapy. You would think if you can't walk, you could do it in the water. No, it's just so much difficult, more difficult in the water.
Do you sometimes look around, and I know this may be a tough question. Do you look around and ask, why me?
Why me?
Especially yeah, especially considering what your children and what yourself have been through in the last couple of years.
I did in the beginning. There was a lot of times in my life that I asked that question. I was a Christian at the age of 8, and I knew the Bible from the beginning to the end by the age of 9. I won the second place in a state Texas Bible drill, so that's huge. I went church camp every summer. I was such a devoted Christian, and I did Bible studies in my bedroom every morning, journaled it. And yes, for being such a devoted Christian, I asked, God, I'm, I love being a Christian and learning about you and the Lord. Why do you place all this bad stuff on me? But he has, I know now, I believe that I went through everything in my life that was difficult that I did go through because I had to be strong to face this disorder because it is, like I said, they call it a beast. Actually, that's what they call it because it is so painful. You know how painful a Charlie horse is in your foot? Well, you'll have Charlie horses in your neck, in your shoulders, and in your back, and they are so, so painful. I had Before I saw my specialist, I didn't know what was going on with my neck, so my husband was taking me to the urgent care center like every other week. They did a CAT scan and they could see muscle spasms on the CAT scan, and they would give me, morphine or Dilaudid, and it would last for a little while, but then it would come back, and they would also give me some muscle relaxers through an IV. It would come back, and I'd be back there again for some more medicine until now I get injections every 3 months of Botox in my neck, and that keeps them at bay, for about 2.5, 3 months or so.
You mentioned the Bible, and I grew up in the church and I studied the Bible. And I used to give Bible talks and do Bible studies as well. So I love hearing that from you because I know how important it was to me. And it was later on in my life, actually. I was in my teenage years towards my adult years, my early adult years. And when you speak, it reminds me of some similarities between Job, where,
I've heard that before
yeah, yes, where he went through what he went through as a test
of his faith.
of his faith and his strength. And when you share that now, and you mentioned you had those questions to yourself, but now you have to go through it and you have to find the strength to do it. It brings me back to that story. I want to say that you are definitely showing your strength when you're going through this because remember as a kid we used to give Charlie horses as like a prank. And when you describe what you went through, I remember the inability to use your legs, and then now you're going through it in your neck, your shoulders, and those areas. Now that you're about to enter year 5 and you have these loving husband who's your support system, you have these beautiful children. What is something that you've learned about yourself as you go through this condition?
What have I learned about myself? Um, I would say I believe that I took a lot of things for granted. And that being, just ordinary daily necessities, daily basic tasks, like being able to wash your own hair, being able to brush your hair, brush your teeth, um, give yourself a bath, go to the bathroom by yourself, walk. I mean, I used to walk 11 flights of stairs 3 times a day, and I did yoga. I was like an expert yoga, um, where I did the roundouts and the plows and things like that, and then I noticed that's when I started noticing it because I couldn't go from one side to the other when I was doing my yoga. And I did yoga every day. I never took a break. So, I would say what I've learned is that if I could go back, I know I would still get this disorder, but I would go back, I would change, and I would not take life for granted because you never know in the blink of an eye something like mobility, motor skills can be taken away from you and you can't brush your own hair, you can't bathe yourself. And I mean, my husband's been the only person 100% take care of me for almost a year now. I've been on disability for almost 2 years, and he's been not able to work. Next month will be a year, and he's taken care of me every single day since then. And I couldn't do it without him. And even so, there's times that when I would hurt and stuff, I'd be like, I pray to God, just take me. I can't do this anymore. But I hear a voice and it tells me, yes, you can. You made it through everything that you did. You can make it through this too.
And when you hear that voice, how special is that voice to you as it's giving you this encouraging words, this inspiration to continue forward, even on days that are dark? It's your light.
It really hits hard and it makes me realize, yes, I can. I can do this. Like I think of the little train that couldn't. And yes, I can. I can just keep telling myself that's my affirmation for the day when I feel those ways. Or I still see a Christian counselor every week. We do it by telephone now, but and she helps me. She puts me right back on the right track and points me in the right direction and tells me, "You can do this." And she reminds me again too, what you have been through. Look what you have made it through. You're still telling your story. You're sharing your life. You're being an inspiration for others. You're bringing awareness to MSA, which is one of my goals too.
So I want to say that is beautiful that you still are connected with your church in that way, with your counselor in that way. And one thing I want to highlight is that even for every single person, we all need that support system. You have that voice, you have your church, you have your husband, you have your counselor. When you look around and all these people who are showing you love, how does that make you feel inside? knowing that there's all these people around you that are showing you love in the different ways that they can.
It makes me feel special, I have to admit, I didn't write this book out of pity, but people do get saddened by the things that had happened to me, and they feel like they're in my shoes when they read the book, but I want to motivate them to know they're not alone, and it makes me feel that I'm not alone, because sometimes I do, I feel alone. I feel like nobody understands the things that I'm going through, but I know they do, in a way, or not really, but, in a way. So it enlightens me, so I should say.
And I think there's so many of us who would automatically assume that you are alone because MSA will kind of isolate you from other people because, as you mentioned, it's rare. So most people aren't experiencing this, but you have people that are looking at you and you're special, you're important. When I look at you today and when I hear your story, you're the same person. Even if you didn't have this, I can tell that you have people around that's making you feel special. And you are special because you're coming here and you're sharing this story with me and you're encouraging me. You're inspiring me. And I know there's so many other people that are being inspired by this. Did you ever think that you would be able to use this MSA to inspire others, to show strength, to assist people in the way that you're being helped?
No, I didn't. And as you know, the book is forwarded by Kirk Cameron, and he actually is the one that inspired me and motivated me to write a book. So, um, but before that, I would have never pictured me writing a book or doing these podcasts, but I feel, well, before I met Kirk Cameron, God did come to me in a vision, and it was just a round ball of bright light. These hands came out in a praying position, and they opened up wide, and it said, I heard him say, "My child, your time is near, but you must tell your story from the beginning first." And I was supposed to go to see my best friend in Vermont in October, and then she got COVID, so we didn't get to go. And we were driving by a church, and we saw on the marquee, Kirk Cameron is coming on the following week. So my husband asked me, did you want to go see Kirk Cameron instead? And I was like, sure, yeah. So he said, ask your mom if she wants to go with you. My stepmom, I call her mom. She's been my mom since I was 13 months old because my mom died when I was just a baby. And so she went with me. I mean, we had VIP tickets, so we got to go in and ask questions and answers. And I raised my hand, and I got shy and put it down. And this man in the middle of the aisle, he raises his hand. And when Kirk says, yes, sir, he says, the lady on the end has a question for you. And I was like, oh my, put me on the spot here. And I asked him if they were going to do a Seavers family reunion. And he said, it's been in the talks, but Alan Thicke has passed away, but Joanna Kearns and Jeremy Miller and Tracy Gold and I have talked about it. And I said, I just want you to know, I want to know, I had your posters all over my bedroom walls when I was growing up. And I wrote you a letter and asked you for your autograph. And I gave you 3 months and you never wrote me back. So I tore all your posters off my walls and you broke my heart and I was so upset. He said, oh my, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. Oh, we'll definitely make that up to you tonight. So we had picture time. And these men put me on, they asked me if they wanted them to put my wheelchair on the stage. And I said, no, you don't have to do that. I was just going to wait till he got done with everybody and see if he'll come down off stage and take one with me. And they said, no, we don't mind. We'll put you on stage. I was like, okay. So they picked me up in my wheelchair and put me on stage. When I got up to Kirk Cameron, I gave him a defeat MSA.org bracelet. And he said, is that what you have? And I told him, yes. He said, I would like to speak with you more after the event. So I said, okay. Well, after the event, you have campfire and go outside. And I told the security guard I wanted Kirk to sign my ticket. And he said, okay, I'll go get him for you. And he came over to me and he asked me if he could pray for me. And he knelt down on the ground and he grabbed both of my hands and he prayed. And I told him what God had told me. He said, well, how do you plan on doing that? And I said, I really don't know. And he said, why don't you write a book? I said, I haven't written anything but a poem my whole life. He goes, you can do it. Just pray to God to give you the words. You know, you can do it. So here's my email address. Keep me updated. So I did. The next day I went home and I started writing and I prayed, you know, God give me the words, and they just flowed out. And I devoted 3 or 4 hours a day to writing the book. And by January, that was October. By January 23rd, I was finished with the book. And Kirk asked me to send him my manuscript. So I did, and he sent me back a beautiful foreword. And it was published on March 7th, the book was. And
What does that book mean to you?
it means a lot to me. It is my legacy. And it's going to be here for years, forever. You know, people can read it forever, even after I'm gone. And it's going to benefit my children. And I do donate some of the proceeds to MSA research to help them find a cure. Also donating my brain to them, by the way, so that they can research my brain for, you know, causes and cures. But yeah, that's what it means. It's my legacy. It's my life story, but it's my legacy.
And that book, your experience, will stand the test of time because it's an extension of you. For those who may not get to meet you, they will get to know you through the book. If there's one dream that you have for the book, or one goal that you have for the book, what would that be and why?
That goal is to inspire people that may have gone through similar situations or life circumstances to know that they are not alone. You know, God is always with you. Sometimes he puts you through certain circumstances to get you back on track if you've gotten off track. But he never puts you through more than you can handle. And at the time you're going through it, you're thinking, I can't handle this, you know, but God knows you can. He knows you got it. So I just want to inspire people to know that and to give them hope. If they have faith, God's going to get you through it. He's going to pull you out of that quicksand.